Alright, let me be brutally honest with you. When I clicked play on the Netflix documentary Sean Combs' The Reckoning, I thought, okay, cool, we're probably just getting a recap of headlines. A recap of stuff the internet has been screaming about for months. But nah, this documentary is built completely differently. There are moments in here that the average viewer just blows right past. Stuff you only catch if you're really paying attention. Background details, editing tricks, sequence choices, quiet lines that completely reframe entire chapters of Diddy's story. And I'm telling you right now, Netflix absolutely hid things in this documentary on purpose. Not hidden as in conspiracy, hidden as in subtle. Hidden in the pacing, hidden in the framing, hidden in the way they cut between people's reactions. Hidden in the fact that one sentence or one shot will change how you feel about an entire era of bad boy if you actually catch it. So today, we're breaking down the 7 biggest things you missed in Sean Combs' The Reckoning. The 7 moments that completely change how this documentary hits when you see the deeper storytelling behind them. I guarantee there's at least 3 in here you didn't notice, even if you swear you caught everything. Let's get into it. Most people watched the leaked pre-indictment call and got caught up in the words, but the real story is in the way he speaks. Netflix holds every stutter, every repeated word, every broken off sentence. He'll start speaking fast, then instantly slow down. He'll repeat the same sentence 3 times. He sighs into the phone. He talks like a man who's trying to keep control of a situation slipping right out of his hands. And Netflix doesn't hide it. They don't tighten the audio. They don't clean it up. They let it sit. They let it breathe. They let you feel the panic. This is where the documentary tells you something without telling you anything. The confident global superstar is replaced by a guy sounding terrified of what's coming. Viewers remember what he said, but they missed how he said it, and that's where the real emotional storytelling is happening. Now, here's something almost no one catches the first time. The lawyers don't sound confident either. In that same phone call, you can hear his team disagreeing, talking over each other, hesitating. One lawyer tries to calm him down but stumbles through his sentences. Another actually says, "We're not working together the right way." Another says, "We're losing." That's insane. Lawyers rarely admit weakness on record, ever. And Netflix places these lines in the edit with zero commentary. No dramatic music, no highlight. Just raw audio that tells you everything you need to know. This wasn't a unified defense. This wasn't a team operating like a machine. It was a group of people scrambling to keep up with a situation moving faster than they could handle. The documentary doesn't point a finger. Instead, it shows you the moment the armor starts cracking. Not from prosecutors, but from inside his own team. This one is brutal and incredibly intentional. Aubrey talks about inappropriate messages, blurred boundaries, and pressure she felt inside Danity Kane. She says things that make your stomach drop a little. And then, with zero transition, Netflix cuts hard to the scene of Diddy firing her on making the band. He tells her she's not provocative enough, not promiscuous enough, then tells her to leave. Netflix did not put these clips back to back by accident. They're showing viewers something without saying it directly. Not accusing, not narrating, just letting the contrast between her story and the old footage speak for itself. It's one of the sharpest editorial decisions in the entire series. And unless you're paying attention to the cut, you miss the message hiding inside it. This edit alone changes the way you view that old footage forever. There's one single sentence in the Biggie segment that flew way over people's heads, and it might be the most important line in the entire documentary. One of Biggie's associates says Big wasn't comfortable going to LA after Tupac's death. He says Big was supposed to fly to London 2 days later, but then he says Big was urged to stay. That is a massive statement. Netflix doesn't amplify it. They don't dramatize it. They don't even follow up. They just let it sit in the air for 2 seconds before moving on. But if you catch it, the entire narrative of Biggie's final days shifts. It hints at internal disagreements, pressure, last-minute decisions, a sense that the people around Big might not have been on the same page about his safety. Most viewers were so focused on the nostalgia of the Biggie clips that they missed the emotional weight of that line. But once you hear it, you can't unhear it. There's a scene where Diddy stands outside the location of the old Bad Boy building, the literal birthplace of so much hip-hop history. The building is gone now, completely gone. But here's the detail. Netflix places this scene right before the documentary transitions into the downfall arc. It's not nostalgia, it's symbolism. That demolished building is the physical representation of the end of an empire, the end of the era that made Diddy who he is. It's a funeral without any mourning music. It's the documentary saying, this era is over, using visual language instead of narration. Most viewers just saw Diddy reminiscing, but Netflix was doing way more than that. They were closing a chapter before opening the darkest part of the story. Everybody saw the footage, but most people didn't realize where Netflix placed it. It's the exact midpoint of the documentary, the moment the entire tone shifts. Everything before the footage is building tension. Everything after is fallout. The music changes. The pacing slows. The interviews get heavier. The story becomes less about fame and more about consequence. Netflix anchors the entire documentary around that moment. It's the emotional peak, the climax, the scene that makes the viewer understand the gravity of everything they've watched so far. The footage itself is horrific, but the placement is what transforms the documentary. There's a moment where Diddy walks through Harlem hugging people, smiling, shaking hands, taking pictures. A lot of viewers thought he was reconnecting with his roots. A sweet moment, nostalgic. But look at how Netflix sets it up. Right before that clip, an interviewee says people turned their backs on him. Right after that clip, they talk about public image collapsing. In film, placement is everything. By sandwiching that Harlem scene between those two moments, Netflix is subtly framing it as calculated, not organic. It comes across like damage control, a last-minute attempt to show, I'm still loved, I'm still one of you. It's not just a walk, it's a strategy, and that framing completely changes how you interpret that footage. Now, before we wrap up, we need to talk about something that's been just as fascinating as the documentary itself, the reactions from celebrities. Because trust me, they did not hold back. And what's wild is the spectrum. Some were shocked, some were disgusted, some were way too calm, and some seemed like they'd been waiting years to say something. So let's walk through what the industry is saying, because their reactions honestly tell a story of their own. Obviously, we gotta start with the most vocal one, 50 Cent. He spoke on the documentary like he's been waiting for this moment his entire career. And to be fair, he actually addressed that. He said people think it's revenge or beef, but in his mind, it's about defending the culture. He made it clear, if he stayed silent, people would assume hip-hop was cool with all this. And he didn't want that. But then it gets even spicier, because when someone asked him how Diddy would react watching the doc, he straight up said Diddy would think it's amazing, the best documentary he's seen in years, because he knows the truth. That is a wild statement. And whether you agree or not, it gives you a window into how 50's viewing the entire situation. He doesn't see this as a hit piece. He sees it as reality finally catching up. Joe Budden's reaction was honestly one of the most raw ones. He said by the time he finished episode 2, he was pissed at Diddy. Not the filmmakers, not 50, but Diddy himself. And what pushed him over the edge was the Biggie section. The timeline, the way certain decisions were presented, the hints that Big didn't want to be in LA. Joe said it reframed things he thought he understood years ago. But he also gave credit. He said the doc wasn't a hit piece because it showed Diddy's success too. And that's important, because it means the documentary landed exactly the way Netflix wanted. It didn't feel one-sided. It felt like a rise and fall story. Joe Budden basically summed up what a lot of older hip-hop fans were feeling. It's dark, it's heavy, and it changes how you see everything. Dame Dash came through with one of the harshest industry reactions, but not toward Diddy, toward 50. He said straight up, never trust a black man who makes a documentary tearing down another black man for a white company. That's one of the heaviest criticisms levied so far. Dame felt like this was bad for the culture, that 50 should have handled things privately, and that putting this level of internal damage on display only benefits outsiders. But a lot of people disagreed with him, saying keeping everything inside is exactly how abuse gets protected. So Dame's take sparked a whole side debate about accountability and community. Either way, his reaction shows just how split the industry is over the doc. Rosenberg had a totally different angle. He believes 50's involvement is absolutely personal. He went all the way back to How to Rob, the song that pissed off the entire industry and caused half of hip-hop to turn their backs on 50. He said 50 never forgot how certain people treated him in those early years. And in Rosenberg's mind, this documentary is 50 saying, "Remember when y'all tried to play me? Look where we are now." He didn't bash 50, but he also made it clear this wasn't just content. It was long-term tension finally exploding in the open. A lot of dancers, assistants, people who worked around Bad Boy, people from the Danity Kane and Dirty Money eras, they came out saying the same thing. The documentary finally put visuals and voices to things that were whispered about for years. The reaction from people who were actually inside the machine was the biggest sign the doc wasn't viewed as exaggerated. They weren't shocked. They were relieved it finally aired. Some even said the documentary didn't go deep enough. And here's something interesting. A lot of big-name celebrities have stayed silent. No posts, no reactions, no statements, nothing. People like Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Drake, Usher, Justin Bieber, Mary J. Blige. It's not that they didn't watch it. Trust me, everybody in the industry watched this documentary, but they didn't say anything publicly. And in Hollywood, silence is usually a statement. Celebrities who used to be publicly close to Diddy have suddenly gone radio silent. Liked no posts, reposted nothing, said nothing. It's almost like there's an unspoken understanding that the safest thing right now is distance. Even the people who always defended him in the past haven't stepped up this time. It's very telling. A lot of hip-hop voices, journalists, commentators, podcasters said this documentary felt like a turning point. That even people who shrugged off past headlines couldn't shrug this off. Because this time, there were receipts, footage, faces, dates, people speaking with their real names, and editing choices that cut deeper than any narration could. For many people in the culture, this wasn't just a documentary. It was history catching up. So when you put it all together, celebrity reactions fall into 4 lanes. Some, like 50, think the documentary is overdue and necessary. Some, like Joe Budden, were shocked at how heavy it was. Some, like Dame Dash, think the documentary crossed a line culturally. And the biggest stars? They're choosing to say absolutely nothing, which might be the loudest message of all. And that silence might end up defining how the industry moves from here.